It's no secret that I am a diehard Mac user, but I have a confession to make. I've only got one desktop computer at home, and it ain't a Mac. It's a PC running Windows that I pretty much only use to play games on, sometimes the web browser. So when MSI asked to sponsor a video about their Stealth 16 gaming laptop, I figured that this was my chance to actually use Windows for a whole week. My biggest complaint with Windows is how much crap there is on it. Now, it was a lot worse in Windows 10. Windows 11 has improved things, but there is still too much garbage in here. There's ads for Farm Merch Valley in my search. I'm getting a bunch of news articles that I don't care about. My start menu is littered with apps like TikTok and Spotify. Now, there is a way to go and manually disable much of these, but in my experience, new Windows feature updates re-enable them. It's frustrating and I'm sick of it, and we want to get rid of them. There's a few ways to go about this. The most popular is using debloating tools on GitHub. They are all over the place. But I have done this a few times on desktop and run into some issues because while you can get rid of tons of stuff, some of them are like Windows dependencies that you still need. So if you get rid of them, you screw up your machine. This being a laptop with a bunch of drivers, I don't really want to mess stuff up. So what I do, and I really like it, is a tool from Chris Titus Tech, a fellow content creator here on YouTube. He's got a really fantastic tool that allows you to basically debloat Windows and install a bunch of dependencies all in one go, which is pretty sweet. So not only do you have development dependencies that you might require, but you've got a bunch of just apps that you can install for Windows using Winget, which is really great. So I can download Chrome, I can get Discord, I can go and download iTunes, you don't want that, but I can go get 7-zip and GPU-Z and hardware info, and I can download stuff, Steam, GOG Galaxy, the Epic Games Launcher, so I can get my free game every week and never buy anything from there. You can download and install all these stuff. You push install selection, and if you look at the PowerShell window, it just starts to do it in the background. This is awesome. You don't have to go through installers. You don't have to download packages off the web. No executables. Just all in the background. Super sweet. So that's the first part that I really like about this tool. The second part is in the tweaks category. This is disabling bloat and features that you don't actually want running in Windows. Now, the installs are already done. Wasn't that fast? Okay, now what I can do now is basically disable a bunch of stuff that I don't want running. I'm going to go with the recommended selections for laptop. So this disables Wi-Fi sense, telemetry, location tracking, a bunch of that stuff, but doesn't, for example, disable hibernation, which you want on a laptop for power management. You can go much crazier with this by removing Cortana. You can remove Microsoft Edge, which I am going to do because I hate Microsoft Edge. It used to be good and now it's awful. Thanks, Microsoft. And then all you have to do is just say run tweaks. Boom. Furthermore, you can go into config. This allows you to enable some features that are turned off by default. They come as part of the OS like Hyper-V virtualization, but is not enabled by default. You can enable that. You can also reset some stuff running in the background if things are janky. Sorry, it's running a bunch of stuff in the background. They keep popping up. You can also pull up a bunch of legacy Windows panels. These are settings panes that are gone and have been replaced with the new version of the Windows settings, but the new Windows versions are not quite as navigable and some pro features are missing. Mac OS is guilty of the same with the new system's settings app, horrible. So you can pull up some of the old panels if you need access there. Last, this is really cool. This is the updates pane. You can basically tell Windows how often to fetch and install updates. Windows Update Manager is so dumb. It does stuff all the time, seemingly randomly. It doesn't schedule over the night. You're doing work and it's like, I'm shutting down now. I hate them. It's really frustrating as a Mac user and they come so frequently because, well, of security vulnerabilities. This tool is really great. It's free. You can run it right from the PowerShell, or if you want an executable, because it is handy. This Winget tool allows you to actually upgrade and update all of your apps in the background too. So you can just keep doing this time and time again, and it's nicer to have an executable to do that from, but Chris charges $10 for it. You should give it to him because this is an awesome tool that he provides for free through PowerShell. But yeah, definitely check this out. Windows is now finally debloated. I have to change a couple of other settings because, but don't worry, we're gonna get this thing super nice and ready to rumble. As you can see, this has been a little bit of an adjustment for me because this is a very large laptop compared to the 13-inch MacBook Air that I've been using, both in footprint and in thickness. But there's a reason, and it's not just because it's a PC. I know a lot of Mac guys have the stereotype that PCs are just inefficiently built and don't make a very good use of space. But you'll see when I pop this lid off that there is a lot going underneath the hood. And this thing is absolutely bananas. There is a massive amount of cooling here, and that's because our chips are very power hungry. We've got an Intel i7-13620H. That is a 45-watt TDP laptop chip. It can draw up to 115 watts TDP when under full load at maximum boost, which is 4.9 gigahertz, an unbelievable amount of performance and power consumption. That's just the CPU. We've also got a dedicated GPU. You're not going to find that really on a MacBook Pro. We've got an NVIDIA 4070 laptop. This chip can also draw up to 115 watts as a package with its 8 gigabytes of a GDDR6 NVRAM. What I really like to see here, and is not common on a lot of laptops, is that all of the power delivery components, your MOSFETs, are actually actively cooled with a copper heat pipe going over to this assembly. And you've got two massive blower fans that suck air in from the bottom of the case and exhaust appropriately out the sides and the back. This means that with a lot of power-hungry components, we are going to need a lot of battery. It's going to be, theoretically, this machine's weak point. And MSI, I guess, has done the very best they can. They have a 99.99 watt-hour battery in here. This is the legal limit that you can fly on an airplane with. So they physically cannot put a larger battery in here. It's as big as it gets. And we'll see that power is pretty decent on this machine. Battery's not fantastic, but that's because, again, when under load, these components are very, very beefy, as we will soon demonstrate. But that doesn't mean that there's no further upgradability. You've got access to your Wi-Fi card. You've got access to your CMOS battery. You've got access to, with a screwdriver, your memory, which is under a Faraday cage for interference issues. You can pop this out, it's slotted, you can upgrade it, easy peasy, just like that. You've also got an SSD that is not only removable and upgradable, but is right next to a completely vacant slot. I can throw another SSD in here today, giving myself 2 internal drives on this machine. Supremely cool. This is packaging that admittedly we're used to on the PC laptop side. Nothing MSI has done here is particularly incredible or notable. However, I think their packaging is quite amazing because these are really beefy components from a power standpoint. And this laptop, while large compared to the MacBook Air as I demonstrated earlier, is not large at all compared to a 16-inch MacBook Pro. It's a little bit thicker than that 16-inch MacBook Pro, and this is tapered, but it's much lighter. This is a half a pound lighter. Oh my goodness, I need to switch to my dominant hand. This is half a pound heavier than the MSI Stealth 16, and you can feel every bit of it. Typically, in Windows laptops, you have cheaper components. Things feel a little bit more rickety in favor of upgradability. And MSI has actually circumvented that bias that I think Mac users have by offering both. You get upgradability. You can buy the machine and put more RAM in down the road. You can upgrade the storage if you run out. You don't have to pay crazy amounts of money today. You don't have to pay markup. 2 terabytes on here, well, you just buy a $120 NVMe on Amazon. On this machine, it's almost $1,000, 800. Yikes, don't want to do that. And this machine doesn't get chintzy with components either. These are really, really nice. It uses a magnesium aluminum alloy, so this is not plastic. It feels really, really good and is what makes this machine so light. It's lighter than the aluminum found on the MacBook Pro. It's got the same battery, it's actually slightly larger. It's got far more power hungry, but also more performant chips, as we will find out. And it does so in a package and in a form factor that frankly is shockingly similar. And I really love this blue coating. It's basically the same color that's on the MacBook Pro, but whereas the MacBook Pro gets super nasty and greasy really easily, this one doesn't as much. It doesn't say it says fingerprint proof, which is not true, but you can see I've got my moisture, but then once it fades away, it looks pretty darn good. And the MacBook Air, that's stuck there forever. much better coating on the MSI Stealth 16. So it's packaged well, and the performance should be good, right? All of those high power components result in high performance. That sounds obvious, but hear me out. Apple Silicon fans have become a little brainwashed over the last couple years because while they have really high efficiency, they often conflate that with absolute maximum performance. And the reality is that even though Apple Silicon is amazing, it's not the most performant chip on the market, and it hasn't been since it launched. Proof is in this pudding. This is a mid-range to mid-upper range laptop. It's less expensive than a MacBook Pro, and it runs circles around it in most synthetic and real-world benchmarks that we ran. Now, the CPUs are closer than you might think, but the GPUs are no comparison. The difference is that this does it consuming 4 times more power. It uses 100 watts under load, whereas an Apple Silicon MacBook Pro uses maybe 30. So even though they have the same size battery, a MacBook Pro is going to get you far more runtime. Doesn't mean the battery in this is bad, but it doesn't mean that it's on the same level as Apple Silicon. But if you need absolute performance, it doesn't matter how efficient you are. You need that power. And an instance in where this really comes in clutch is pretty much anything that uses a GPU. Let's open a game here, something you can do on Apple Silicon computers. I know that the Rosetta development kit, API porting thing, the game porting toolkit exists. It's not a thing, okay? Not when you look at the performance of this machine. Here I am in a Rocket League match. I am running this at the native display resolution of 1200p, and it's no problem at all. This game is running at, I'm running OBS. I have another game open in the background, and I'm running this at in excess of what the panel can even really run it at. This is above 144 FPS. So it's no contest. This game is an esports game. It's not that graphically intensive. I mean, a Nintendo Switch can, that was a close game. That should have gone in the goal. The Nintendo Switch can run this game, right? So it's not that incredible, but if we go to a game that is known to be more graphically demanding, like, I don't know, Cyberpunk 2077, we'll see that this thing can actually hold its chops to real desktop class performance. So I am running this game at, again, 1200p. If we go into the graphics settings, they are set to the custom preset, but everything is maxed out. Texture quality is high. Everything else is high. The things that are ultra, can be ultra, are ultra. The ray tracing is on ultra. Like, this is as high as the graphics settings get for the resolution that I'm running this game at, which again is 1200p. I do have NVIDIA DLSS turned on. So I am generating frames in between what the CPU, or excuse me, the GPU is actually capable of producing them. But you'll see that even with all of these settings maxed out and DLSS super resolution turned on, I can pull about 50 frames per second in a benchmark. Now, if I turn super resolution off and I turn frame generation off, my real world frame rate drops to around 20, 25 FPS at 1200p, everything maxed out at ultra. But with frame generation turned on and super resolution turned on, it's very difficult for me to perceive a difference. It doesn't seem like I'm messing with the dynamic resolution, and it doesn't seem like I'm throwing fake frames in there. It just seems like a really, really smooth game. It looks fantastic. I'm barely using any resources. Listen to the laptop. It's like almost silent. This perception that gaming laptops on Windows are crazy loud, at least it's not true here. This thing is barely making a peep, and we're pulling 60 FPS. Now, yes, that's with DLSS enabled, but even with DLSS disabled, we'd still be mid-20s to 30. Is that excellent? No, but it's better than a game console. And graphically, it looks way better. It's pretty cool that you can do this in a laptop that's not much larger than a 16-inch MacBook Pro. It feels like you actually shouldn't be able to do it, but you can, and it works fine. Okay, so the computer is pretty good, but what about the operating system? That's what this video is about, right? Well, I've been using Windows for a whole week, and do you know what? Not that bad. I don't hate it. I admit that I'm still very unfamiliar with the operating system, and so I prefer Mac OS, but I have, for the first time ever, let myself learn to use Windows, and there's a lot of things that I've really come to appreciate that I didn't previously. Okay, once you debloat everything, the Windows Start menu is actually pretty great. I think you're supposed to pin your frequently used apps here. I haven't done that because I've just put them all in the taskbar. I know this is a Mac thing and I should probably have this basically have nothing, but that's not how I've done it. I also like that you can have all of your apps quickly accessible from here. It's not some random folder that you have to access through the file browser. Search has massively improved with Windows 11. It's still not as good as Spotlight and macOS, but it's serviceable. That was my primary complaint with Windows previously, is that search just sucked. It's pretty good now. One thing I really like is how apps present themselves from within the taskbar. Windows, despite its name, is an application-specific and not a Windows-specific operating system. So you actually run basically multiple instances of an app at the same time. That's why you don't have to quit an app like you do in macOS with a bunch of different windows floating around. But what this does mean is that you can choose to open one or two windows at the same time from within this task manager, which I think is really, really cool. To be able to open one instance or another or both at the same time is something that I have really come to appreciate, and I wish the Mac did the same. I really like the system tray. It's very similar to the menu bar in macOS. Now, in macOS, I will admit that menu bar applets have quite a bit more usability because they can kind of pop down in modal windows. That, to my knowledge, doesn't happen within Windows. You still have to be able to kind of open them up in their own window. But the fact that you can have a bunch of services and processes running down in their own little tray that's hidden away and you don't have to look at it, it's not a blight on sore eyes, is really, really nice. File Explorer is something that I did not at all think that I was going to like, but do you know what? I kind of like it. Here's the thing. It's designed around people that don't have all the hotkeys memorized or don't want to delve into menu bar items like in macOS. The fact that the cut and paste are visible here as icons is visually very nice. I also like that you can cut and paste. In macOS, you don't. You can only copy and then move a file with Shift Option Command V rather than just Command X and Command V. Way better. Okay, let's talk about window management. I love window management on Windows, and I've basically copied it on the Mac. The fact that this is native, that you can drag multiple windows, you can do split screen, you can resize on the fly, you can do it so quickly, top corner, you can do bottom corner, you can do, 60-40 splits. It's amazing. macOS's window management sucks. It always has. I've always hated it. There are apps like Magnet and Better Snap Tool and others that exist to basically copy Windows implementation, and that's because Windows implementation is really good. If you're a Mac user, like, oh yeah, but what about Mission Control and Expose and all of that old stuff that macOS has? There is multiple desktop support here in Windows 2, and it works just as well, frankly, as I think macOS does. You can get the core essentials, but then window snapping, at least for me, works way better than something like, what's the new thing that sucks? Stage Manager. Yeah, that thing sucks. Okay. There are a number of really small but super cool features in Windows that I have come to appreciate that I had no idea even existed. Maybe most Windows people don't know they exist. But if you push Windows V, there's this awesome little window that pops up that has so much cool stuff inside. Amongst which is Universal Clipboard Management. I had no idea there was Universal Clipboard in Windows, but there is, and it works amazingly well. So every time you copy something or paste something or whatever, it comes into this little frame. Text, images, I think even short video clips, certainly GIFs, doesn't matter. It all pops up here. And if I want to reattach this image to my clipboard, I just double click it and there you go. That is freaking sweet. I had no idea that was a thing. This window has other goodies inside of it, amongst which is a GIF selector. I know this sounds corny, but people use GIFs all the time. On mobile, it's certainly a thing on social media. I don't ever do it on my Mac because there's no good way to do it. I have to go to like giphy.com and then copy it. This just works. And it's really, really fast. That is super neat. The thing that I have come to appreciate the most about Windows, though, is that it's just blazing fast. It's not pretty, but everything it does is fast. Opening windows, transitions, opening, different frames. Everything is just like instantly quick. Way faster than on macOS. It's a little bit less attractive, but I would much rather take speed over pretty. Windows is blazing fast and macOS is just not. It's felt slower and slower over time. But that's not to say that I like everything about Windows. I hate one thing about Windows that I've always hated about Windows, and I did it like 7 times this week, and I wanted my brain to explode. When you're on a website and you open up a file picker, on macOS, because macOS is smart, you can just take a file, you drag it over into this window, it automatically goes to that directory and selects that file for you to upload to the website. This is ridiculous. Look at this. I take this photo, I drag this over to this window, and it completely moves the file location from within the file system. Why would I ever want to do that? It treats this as if it is like a regular File Explorer window and not a window that is serving a purpose to upload a file to a website from within a web browser. It is completely stupid. I hate it. But my biggest complaint about Windows is the app ecosystem. It's just not up to par. There are so many apps that I depend on in macOS that just do not exist for Windows and completely broke my workflow all week. Fantastical, my calendar app, there is no alternative. What am I going to use? Outlook, Google Calendar? No, that's not acceptable. Power tools that sit like below the operating system, like Alfred or Raycast, are indispensable to me as a Mac user. There are a few kind of alternatives that have come up for Windows, but they all suck. I tried them all. I'm not even going to mention them because none of them are good. My Mastodon client, Mona, is beautiful on macOS. There is no good Mastodon client on Windows. I have to go through the website, and the website sucks. And then I just end up on Twitter, pardon me, X. There are a few alternatives. For example, I use Apple Music. I was not about to download iTunes because what an abomination of an application for Windows. It's so old and crappy and dated. But this app, Cider, I actually think does a pretty good job. It's just an Electron app that has a web view of Apple Music, but it works really well and feels basically like a native music client. But that is my main complaint with Windows. It's not Windows. Windows is actually fine. I could use this operating system, no problem. It is the app ecosystem that supports it, or I guess doesn't support it, that makes it so game-breaking for me. If I was a normal person, it would be fine. I could switch over and back and probably have no issues. But I'm not the type of guy that just uses standard Google services or Outlook and is happy. I have these paid apps that are amazing apps that just do not exist on Windows. And there's so many of them. And that's why, despite thinking it's actually pretty good, I probably won't continue to use it. Except for gaming. This laptop will be my go-to for gaming on the go because it does it so well. And the Mac? Video games? If you're interested in the MSI Stealth 16 Studio or Stealth 14, I highly recommend you go to the link in the video description below. By so doing, you will be supporting Snazzy Labs and you'll end up with a pretty awesome Windows laptop. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.